Hey guys, tonight we're time travelling into a world where sex work wasn't whispered about in back alleys. It was regulated by the government, taxed by the city, and operating under signed contracts with labour protections. Seriously, you've heard about medieval morality before. Chastity belts, religious guilt, burning heretics at the stake, all that. But none of that compares to this little detail. Medieval Paris had licensed brothels with health inspections and workers who could sue their clients in court. Yeah, wrap your modern mind around that while you're scrolling through debates about legalisation in 2025. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me what you think about this topic, because medieval sex work is way more complicated than anyone expects, and I want to know if this surprised you too. Now, dim the lights, maybe pour yourself some wine like a medieval Parisian, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts in a muddy street in the 14th century, where morality, economics and survival created a system stranger than fiction. Your feet are killing you. That's the first thing you notice when you step into 14th century Paris, not the grandeur of Notre Dame in the distance or the romance of cobblestone streets, just the immediate visceral pain of walking too far in worn leather shoes on unforgiving stone. The mud doesn't help. Medieval Paris is basically one giant puddle with buildings. You're in the Latin Quarter, near the university, and the noise hits you like a physical thing. Tavern songs in bad French, arguments in worse Latin, the constant background roar of too many people crammed into too little space. The smell is spectacular, and not in a good way. Open sewers, animal dung, rotting vegetables, and underneath it all the thick sweetness of too many unwashed bodies packed together. You're looking for the bathhouse Margot told you about. That's what they call them. Bathhouses. Everyone knows what that means. You find it on a narrow street that somehow manages to be both crowded and vaguely threatening. The building is timber framed, 3 stories, with actual glass and some windows. That surprises you. This isn't some grimy back alley operation. It looks, well, respectable isn't quite the right word, but legitimate maybe. The door is heavy oak. You knock. A slot opens. Eyes examine you, and then the door swings wide. The woman who opens it is in her 40s, well dressed in deep blue wool with a white linen coif covering her hair. She looks like someone's aunt, maybe a merchant's wife. This is Madame Laurence, and she is absolutely all business. "You're the girl Margot mentioned," she says. Not a question. Her eyes catalogue you with the efficiency of someone who's assessed hundreds of women before. "Come in, wipe your feet." You wipe your feet. Medieval or not, some authorities transcend time periods. The interior is warmer than outside, lit by tallow candles that cast dancing shadows. The main room has benches along the walls, a few tables, and a large hearth, where a pot of something is simmering. It smells like wine and herbs. Several women are sitting near the fire, mending clothes, talking quietly. They glance up when you enter, curious but not particularly interested. You're just another new girl. What catches your eye, what makes you stop and stare, is the document on the wall. It's parchment, official looking, with a wax seal at the bottom. Madame Laurence sees you looking. "City permit," she says with unmistakable pride. "Renewed every year. We're a licensed establishment, all legal and proper according to the ordinances of Paris, dated 1254 and confirmed in 1367. Your brain struggles with this information. A government permit for a brothel, displayed on the wall, like it's a point of pride. But isn't this... You start. A sin? Madame Laurence raises an eyebrow. Of course. The church disapproves very loudly and very publicly, but the city council decided decades ago that if men are going to seek out women, better it happens somewhere regulated than in every dark corner of Paris. So here we are, legal, taxed, and inspected. She says inspected the way someone might say blessed, like it's a good thing. Margot appears from a back room. You recognise her from the market where you met 2 days ago, when your situation became desperate enough to listen to her pitch. She's younger than Madame Laurence, maybe 25, with brown hair and a face that's pleasant without being beautiful. She's wearing a simple dress, clean but not fancy. She could be anyone. "You came," Margot says, smiling. It's a genuine smile which surprises you. "Come on, I'll show you the room." You follow her up a narrow staircase. The second floor has several doors leading off a central hallway. Margot opens one and ushers you inside. The room is small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, with 2 narrow beds, a chest, a small table with a basin and pitcher, and 1 window with shutters. 2 beds, which means shared. "You'll room with me until you decide if you're staying," Margot explains. "After that, if you want your own room, it costs more, comes out of your earnings. Most of us share. Warmer in winter, and honestly, it's nice to have someone to talk to." She sits on one of the beds, pats the space next to her. You sit, still trying to process everything. "I know what you're thinking," Margot says. "It's not what you expected." "It wasn't what I expected either, when I came here 18 months ago." "The permit on the wall, you say? That's real?" "As real as the taxes Madame Laurence pays every quarter. This isn't some criminal enterprise. It's a business. The city regulates as we follow their rules, and in exchange, we have protections." She leans forward, her voice becoming more animated. "Wait until you see the contract." "Contract?" Margot grins. "You don't work here without a contract. Come on." She leads you back downstairs where Madame Laurence is waiting with a piece of parchment. She spreads it on the table, and you lean over to read it. The Latin is formal, legal, and very specific. "I'll translate," Madame Laurence says, her finger following the lines. "You agree to work here for a period of not less than 6 months. You will receive room and board plus 40% of whatever the clients pay. 40%, she emphasises. That's standard across all licensed houses in Paris. You're doing math in your head. 40% sounds like a lot, but also like not enough. The house provides the room, the food, the firewood, the candles, and most importantly, the protection," Madame Laurence continues. "You follow our rules, which means no clients after midnight, no more than 4 clients per night. You have the right to refuse anyone who is violent or drunk beyond reason, and all transactions happen in the public rooms first before going upstairs. You understand?" You nod slowly. "If a client refuses to pay," Margot jumps in, "Madame reports it to the City Watch. We've had men fined, even imprisoned. The law is actually on our side as long as we follow it. This is too much. Your mental image of what this life would be like is crumbling. You expected exploitation, darkness, criminality. Instead, you're getting contracts and percentages and legal protections. There are rules," Madame Laurence says, her voice becoming stern. "You cannot work if you're visibly ill. If you become pregnant, you inform me immediately. We have an arrangement with a midwife. You don't steal from clients, you don't fight with other girls, and you absolutely do not work outside this house. The permit covers this establishment only. You go freelance in the streets, you're on your own, and you're breaking city law." "What happens if—" You trail off, not sure how to phrase it. "If you break the rules, you're out. If a client breaks the rules, we report them. It's that simple." She rolls up the parchment. "Think about it tonight. Watch how it works. If you want to sign tomorrow, we'll make it official." The evening begins as the sun sets. Men start arriving, not in a flood, but a steady trickle. They're mostly young, university students by their dress and manner, loud and nervous and trying to seem more confident than they are. A few older men, merchants probably, who nod to Madame Laurence like she's running a respectable tavern. You watch from the corner as Margot greets a thin young man with ink-stained fingers. A scholar, clearly. They negotiate briefly, quietly. He hands over coins, she counts them quickly, gives half to Madame Laurence and pockets the rest. Then they go upstairs together. The transaction takes maybe 3 minutes. It's businesslike, mundane, weirdly professional. Another woman, Agnes, laughs at something a client says. They share a cup of wine before heading up. The atmosphere is more tavern than anything sinister. Men drink, women chat, money changes hands, and everyone seems to understand the script they're following. Margot returns after about 20 minutes. The scholar is already gone, slipping out the door with his head down. She rejoins you by the fire, counting her coins. 4 sous, she says. Not bad for an easy night. He was nervous. First time, probably. Those are the best clients, honestly. Quick, polite, tip well out of embarrassment. Does it ever, you search for the right word, bother you? Margot considers this seriously. Sometimes. But I was a laundress before this. 14-hour days standing in cold water, ruining my hands, earning 2 sous a day. Here, I work maybe 3 hours most nights, earn 15 to 20 sous per week, and my hands don't bleed from lye soap. She meets your eyes. Is this what I wanted for my life? Number, but it's what's available, and the law protects us. Mostly. That last word hangs in the air. Mostly. The night continues. You watch the rhythm of the house, the casual efficiency of it. Madame Laurence keeps watch over everything, making sure transactions happen in the open, making sure no one gets too drunk, making sure her girls are safe. Around midnight, she starts turning people away. We're closed, she tells a disappointed student. Come back tomorrow. She enforces her own rules strictly. The house has operating hours just like any business. By the time you crawl into the narrow bed next to Margot's, your head is spinning. This isn't what you expected. It's more organised, more legal, more mundane than any story about medieval vice would suggest. The law protects us, Margot says again in the darkness, as if she heard your thoughts. But don't forget that this is still sex work in a world run by men who think we're sinners. The law protects us from them. Mostly. That's better than nothing. But it's not the same as being safe. You fall asleep to the sounds of Paris outside, the distant shouts of drunks, the bells of churches marking the hours, and the knowledge that tomorrow you'll probably sign that contract. Because what else are you going to do? Morning comes too early. You're not used to sleeping in a room with another person, and Margot snores. Not loudly, but enough that you spent half the night aware of another human presence just a few feet away. The bells of Notre Dame are ringing prime, which means it's barely dawn, and already the house is stirring. Margot sits up, stretches, and immediately starts talking like she's been awake for hours. Inspection day, she says, almost cheerfully. You'll want to see this. Inspection? City physician. Comes once a month, more often if there's been illness in the quarter. It's the law. She's already dressed, splashing water on her face from the basin. Madame takes it seriously. Miss an inspection, lose your permit. Lose your permit, lose everything. Downstairs, the other women are gathering in the main room. There are 6 of them besides Margot, and you're learning their names and stories in fragments. Agnes, who's saving for a dowry so she can marry her baker. Eloise, supporting elderly parents who think she works as a seamstress. Jean, who's been here the longest, almost 4 years. Each has her reasons, her plan, her calculations. Madame Laurence is arranging chairs in a row, all business. Line up, she orders, and for God's sake, look presentable. The physician arrives precisely at terce. He's younger than you expected, maybe 30, dressed in a dark robe with the bearing of someone educated. He doesn't look disgusted or judgmental. He looks bored, like this is just another task on a long list of civic duties. Madame Laurence, he greets her with a small nod. All present? All present, Master Raymond. He sets down his bag and pulls out a ledger, a small bottle of what looks like wine, and a cloth. The inspection is methodical and shockingly thorough. He examines each woman's hands, looks at their eyes, checks their throats, asks about any recent illness. When he gets to you, he pauses. New girl? Arrived last night, Madame Laurence confirms, still deciding. He examines you anyway, asks if you've been sick recently, if you have any pains, any unusual symptoms. You shake your head to everything. He makes a note in his ledger. The whole process takes maybe 30 minutes. At the end, he signs the ledger with a flourish and hands it to Madame Laurence. All clear. Next month, same time. Same time, she agrees. Thank you, Master Raymond. After he leaves, you turn to Margot. That happens every month. Every month. City ordinance from 1367, confirmed and expanded. They inspect all the licensed houses. If they find disease, you're quarantined until you're well. If you're too sick, you're out. She says this matter-of-factly, but you hear the edge of fear beneath it. One bad illness could end everything. And he just checks everyone, writes it down. Everything's written down, Margot says. That's the point. The city wants us legal and controlled. Better than having us in the streets where they can't track us. Over breakfast, which is dark bread and weak ale, Margot starts explaining the full system. She does this unprompted, like she's been waiting for an audience who'll actually appreciate the complexity of it. There are rules, she says, tearing off a piece of bread. So many rules. Price controls for one. We can't charge more than 6 deniers for basic service. Anything extra, anything unusual, we negotiate, but the base price is fixed. Keeps the students from being cheated, supposedly. Students, you repeat. They're worried about students being cheated? Agnes laughs from across the table. Students are the sons of important men. Can't have them complaining to their fathers that the brothels overcharge them. Bad for civic relations. Then there are the forbidden acts, Margot continues, lowering her voice slightly, even though everyone here knows this. Anything the church considers particularly sinful. You refuse, client insists, you report it. We had a man last year try to force Agnes into something she wouldn't do. She screamed. Madame called the watch. He spent 3 days in prison and paid a fine. You're trying to wrap your mind around this. The watch arrested him. For what happened in a brothel? For breaking the ordinance, Margot corrects. We're legal. Our work is defined. Step outside those definitions, it's assault. And assault is a crime, even if it happens here. Heloise joins the conversation, her voice weary. Don't think it means we're safe. The law protects us in theory. Practice is different. Rich men, nobles, they know the rules don't really apply to them. They pay the fines like it's nothing. But they do pay, Agnes insists. That's something. The conversation is interrupted by Madame Laurence. Margot, take the new girl to see Father Thomas. Might as well understand the whole situation. Father Thomas is at the parish church 3 streets over. The walk through morning Paris is an education itself. Margot points out the designated zones as you go. See this street? Legal for bathhouses. Next street over, illegal. The city mapped it all out in 1254, updated it in 1367. They wanted us contained in specific areas, away from churches and schools. But we're near the university, you point out. Exactly. Near, not next to. Close enough that students can find us. Far enough that the university can claim moral distance. She grins. Politics. Father Thomas is hearing confessions when you arrive. You wait outside, watching the morning crowd. When he emerges, he sees Margot, and his face does something complicated, settling into weary resignation. Margot, he acknowledges. Father, this is the new girl at Madame Laurence's. Thought she should understand your position. He sighs deeply. Walk with me. As you walk, Father Thomas explains his impossible situation. The church condemns fornication. This is doctrine, unchangeable. What you do is sin, mortal sin, endangering your immortal souls. He says this like he's reciting from memory, which he probably is. However, he continues, and you hear the exhaustion in that word, the city has made these establishments legal. I cannot deny you confession if you repent. I cannot refuse you communion if you are contrite. The church's position is that your work is sinful, but you yourself can still be saved through grace and penance. And the men who visit us, you ask, also sinners, also capable of redemption. He stops, turns to face you both. I will not lie to you. Most priests believe you are damned. They will preach against you from the pulpit, call you daughters of Eve leading men astray. But I also know that you are here because you have no better options. The church condemns prostitution while doing nothing to provide alternatives. It's hypocrisy, and I'm tired of it. This might be the most honest thing a priest has ever said to you. Can we be buried in the churchyard? Margot asks quietly. Father Thomas's face softens with genuine sadness. No, that is forbidden. You will need to make arrangements elsewhere. The walk back is silent. Finally, Margot speaks. So that's the church's position. We're sinners who can be saved but can't be buried with Christians. Helpful. That afternoon, you witness another aspect of the system. The tax collector arrives. He's a small man with a large ledger and the self-important air of a minor bureaucrat. Madame Laurence greets him with barely concealed irritation. Quarterly assessment, he announces. She produces her own ledger, showing her income for the past 3 months. The tax collector examines it with excruciating slowness, making notes, calculating percentages. The Crown takes its cut, the city takes its cut, and what's left belongs to Madame Laurence and by extension to you. Taxes, Margot mutters to you. We're sinners, but they still want their money. After the collector leaves, you ask Madame Laurence the question that's been building. If this is all legal, regulated, inspected and taxed, why is everyone still so ashamed? Why do Eloise's parents think she's a seamstress? Madame Laurence sits down heavily, suddenly looking much older. Because legal doesn't mean respectable. The city tolerates us because we serve a purpose. We keep the students from bothering honest women. We provide an outlet for men's desires in a controlled environment. We generate tax revenue, but that doesn't mean anyone actually respects what we do. We're useful, Agnes says from the doorway, her voice bitter. Like the latrines, necessary, but you don't invite them to dinner. Can you sue a client who doesn't pay, you ask, remembering what Madame Laurence said yesterday. Yes, she confirms, and we have. 3 times in my tenure. Won twice, lost once when the client was well connected enough that the judge sided with him anyway. But the fact that we can try, that we have standing in court that's more than women in most trades have. Margot pulls you aside as evening approaches and the house begins preparing for the night's work. I want to tell you about Isabeau, she says. She worked here when I first arrived. Smart girl, good with numbers. A nobleman took a liking to her, wanted her exclusively, offered to pay Madame triple the usual rate. What happened? He got rough. Not just rough, violent. She refused him the next night. He complained to Madame. She stood by Isabeau, refused to force her to see him again. He went to the city magistrate, argued his contract was violated. Margot's face is hard now, remembering. The magistrate ruled in Isabeau's favour, said no contract can compel a woman to accept violence. The nobleman paid a fine, a small one, barely a week's income for him, but still, the law worked. Where's Isabeau now? Married to a carpenter, saved enough to leave, found a man who didn't care about her past. Happens sometimes. She pauses. The system isn't good, but it's better than nothing. That's what you need to understand. This isn't freedom, but it's more protection than most women get. As the first clients begin arriving for the evening, you watch the machine of it all work. The negotiations, the payments, the careful record-keeping. Madame Laurence oversees everything, enforcing her rules, protecting her girls within the narrow constraints the law provides. You signed the contract this morning. 6 months minimum, 40% of earnings, all the protections and restrictions that come with legality. You're part of the system now. And the system you're learning is neither as simple nor as safe as that permit on the wall suggests. 3 weeks in, and you're starting to understand the rhythm, the economics of survival written in small coins and careful calculations. It's late afternoon, and you're sitting with Margot at the table where she keeps her accounts. She has a small wooden box with a lock, and inside are her earnings, separated into tiny cloth pouches. She counts them obsessively, every few days, like touching them confirms they're real. 15 sous this week, she says, satisfaction clear in her voice. Good week. You do the math in your head. At 40%, that means clients paid 37.5 sous total. Madame Laurence kept the rest for room, board and protection. You're starting to understand why Margot tracks everything so carefully. These numbers are the difference between having a future and not having one. How much did you make as a laundress, you ask? 2 sous a day, maybe 2.5 if I worked fast. 6 days a week, so 12 to 15 sous weekly. She looks up from her counting. Sounds the same, right? but laundry was 14 hours a day standing in cold water. My hands cracked and bled. I got sick constantly from the damp. Here, I work maybe 4 hours most nights, stay dry and warm, and my hands don't hurt. Agnes joined you, dropping her own pouch on the table with a satisfying clink. 18 sous this week. That merchant from Rouen tipped well. Said I reminded him of his daughter, which was deeply uncomfortable, but his money spends fine. How much do you need, you ask her, for the dowry? 100 livres, she says. It sounds impossible. That's 2,400 sous. I've been here 11 months and I have 600 sous saved. Another year and a half. Maybe 2 years if I'm careful and nothing goes wrong, and I'll have it. 2 years of this. You try to imagine it and can't quite manage. 2 years of nightly transactions, of negotiations, of men whose faces you'll forget as soon as they leave. Heloise is quieter about her money. She sends most of it to her parents through an intermediary, a cousin who knows the truth and keeps the secret. They're old, she told you once. Can't work anymore. Without my help, they'd be begging or in the workhouse. So I send them 3 sous a week, keep 5 for myself. It's enough. The client spectrum is something you're learning to navigate. Students are your bread and butter, frequent and usually harmless. They arrive nervous, leave quickly, and rarely cause trouble. They're young enough to still be uncertain, which makes them easy to manage. Tonight, one such student sits across from you in the main room. He's maybe 19, ink stains on his fingers, the anxious look of someone who's rehearsed this conversation 100 times. I've never. He starts, then stops. This is my first. I know, you say gently. It's fine. 6 deniers for upstairs, standard service. We'll take our time. He fumbles with his purse, nearly drops it, manages to extract the coins. 6 small silver deniers that will become 2.4 deniers in your pocket after Madame Laurence takes her share. You lead him upstairs. 20 minutes later, he's gone, and you're 2.4 deniers richer. The transaction was mechanical, professional, and so ordinary that you're already forgetting details. This is what the work actually is. Not dramatic or particularly difficult, just repetitive and occasionally tedious. The merchant clients are different. They're older, more confident, sometimes generous. The one from Rouen that Agnes mentioned becomes a regular for you too. He pays the standard rate but tips extra, a denier or 2, for conversation, he says. He actually wants to talk about his business, his wife who doesn't understand him, his fears about the economy. You listen because that's part of the service too, and honestly, talking is easier than the alternative. Then there are the clergy. You stopped being shocked by this after the first week. Priests, monks, even the occasional bishop's secretary, they all visit. They pay well, tip heavily out of guilt, and never acknowledge you if they see you on the street afterward. The hypocrisy is staggering, but their coins spend just as well as anyone else's. God's chosen servants, Margot says with heavy irony one night after a priest leaves. Sinning on Saturday, preaching about our wickedness on Sunday. At least they pay. The nobleman problem is real, though. You have your first encounter with one on a cold November evening. He arrives with an air of ownership, like the space itself should rearrange to accommodate him. He's well dressed, probably mid-30s, with the particular arrogance that comes from never being told no. You, he says, pointing at you, not asking, commanding. Madame Laurence intercepts smoothly. My lord, that will be 6 deniers standard, or we can discuss arrangements for the evening. He looks at her like she's spoken in a foreign language. I don't pay whores. The room goes very quiet. Madame Laurence doesn't raise her voice, but her tone could cut glass. Then you don't use this establishment. We are licensed and legal. All transactions follow city ordinance. No exceptions. Do you know who I am? I don't care who you are. Pay or leave. The standoff lasts maybe 30 seconds. Finally, he throws coins on the table, far more than necessary, like the excess somehow restores his dignity. You, he points at you again, upstairs, now. You glance at Madame Laurence, she nods slightly. You have to go, but she'll be listening. Upstairs, he's rough but not violent, demanding but not impossible. You endure it with practiced detachment, and when he's finished, he leaves without another word. Downstairs, Madame Laurence is waiting. You all right? Yes, you are, mostly. He paid? Overpaid. 20 deniers. She counts out 8 and hands them to you. Your share. But listen, if he comes back, if he's worse next time, you refuse him. I'll handle the consequences. Will there be consequences? Probably. Men like that think the rules don't apply, but the law is the law, and I've won more of these fights than I've lost. She doesn't sound entirely convinced, though. The nights blur together. Good nights when clients are easy and tips are generous. Bad nights when someone gets too drunk or too rough and has to be thrown out. Average nights when it's just work, transaction after transaction, coins accumulating slowly in your locked box. You start to understand the calculations everyone is making. Agnes needs 2,400 sous for her dowry. She's earning maybe 15 sous per week, 60 per month, 20 months, maybe 24 with slow weeks and illness. She tracks it obsessively, adjusting her timeline every Sunday when she counts her savings. Margot's plan is different. She wants 500 livres, enough to buy a small shop, maybe a bakery or textile stall. It's ambitious. That's 12,000 sous. At her current rate, it'll take years, maybe 8 or 9. She knows this. She's accepted it. I'm 25 now, she says. If I'm 33 or 34 when I leave, that's still young enough to have a life after. Heloise isn't saving for herself. She's saving her parents from destitution. She sends 3 sous a week, every week, 156 sous a year. Her parents are in their 60s. She's buying them years of survival. She doesn't talk about what happens after. Jean, the oldest at 28, is the cautionary tale nobody mentions directly. She's been here 4 years, longer than anyone else. She had a plan once, saved diligently for 2 years, then got sick. Fever that lasted weeks, couldn't work. Medical expenses ate her savings. She recovered but lost everything. Started over. Got sick again last year. Now she just works, no plan, no timeline, existing day to day. Don't be like me, she tells you one night, half drunk on cheap wine. Get out while you can. This place, it keeps you. Makes you think you have time, and then suddenly you're old and no one wants you and you've got nothing saved and nowhere to go. The economics are brutal in their simplicity. You can earn decent money by medieval standards, but only while you're young and healthy. Illness destroys everything. Pregnancy destroys everything. Aging destroys everything. You're racing against your own body, trying to accumulate enough before something inevitable goes wrong. On good weeks, you make 12 to 15 sous. On bad weeks, 6 or 7. You're keeping 5 sous per week for savings, spending 2 on extras, food beyond what Madame provides, a new shift, soap. At this rate, you calculate, you could save 300 sous in a year, 900 in 3 years. 3 years. It sounds both impossibly long and dangerously short. The trick, Margot tells you, is to remember it's not forever. It's a means to an end. Every client, every coin, it's buying your future. You stop thinking that way. Start thinking this is just your life. That's when you're trapped. But you can see how easy it would be to get trapped. The work becomes routine. The money, while not great, is better than alternatives. The household becomes familiar. The other women become friends. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and suddenly you've been here a year and your exit plan is still distant. You think about your life before. You were a baker's assistant, earning 1 sou per day, barely surviving. This is 3 times that income. But the cost isn't just the work itself, it's the stigma, the spiritual danger according to the church, the social death. You can never go back to respectable society, never marry well, never escape the label, unless you save enough to buy your way into a different life, a shop of your own, where your past can be obscured by present respectability, or a dowry large enough that a man will overlook your history. These are the only exits, and they require years of work and perfect luck. How do you stand it? You ask Margot one night. The same thing, night after night. She shrugs. I pretend I'm somewhere else. I do the math in my head, calculating what I'm earning. I think about the shop I'll own someday. Mostly I just stop thinking entirely. You learn to not be present even while your body is. It's the most honest thing she's ever said to you. The work continues. Winter arrives, making everything harder. Clients still come, but fewer. The cold makes the walk to the bathhouse less appealing. Your earnings drop. Everyone's earnings drop. Agnes's timeline extends. Margot's timeline extends. The dream of leaving gets pushed further into the future. But you keep working, keep counting coins, keep making your calculations. Because what else is there? Spring comes, and with it, a crisis that shows you exactly how fragile everything really is. Jean gets pregnant. You don't notice at first. None of you do. She's good at hiding it, wearing looser clothes, avoiding the monthly inspections through careful timing and claimed illness. But by the time spring has fully arrived, it's obvious. Madame Laurence is furious, not at the pregnancy itself, but at the deception. "You should have told me immediately," she says, voice tight with controlled anger. "We have arrangements. The midwife, the protocols." "I couldn't afford to stop working," Jean says. She looks exhausted, older than her 28 years. "I need the money." "And now you'll get nothing for months, and neither will I." Madame Laurence paces, calculating losses. The father could be 3 different men. I don't know. This is the nightmare scenario, and everyone knows it. Pregnancy means months without income. It means medical expenses. It means a child that needs care or money to place elsewhere. It means your body changes, might not recover, might make you less desirable to clients even after. "The midwife will handle it," Madame Laurence finally says. "You're too far along for the herbs to work safely. You'll have the child. We'll find a wet nurse, find a family to take it. You'll work again when you're healed." "How long?" Jeanne asks, and you hear the desperation in her voice. 3 months at minimum, maybe 4. Jean's face crumbles. 4 months without income means 4 months of using her savings just to survive. She had maybe 200 sous saved. It won't be enough. Over the following weeks, you watch her situation deteriorate. She can't work, but she still needs to eat, still needs shelter. Madame Laurence allows her to stay, but charges reduced room and board. It's generous by some standards, but it's still draining Jean's resources. "This is what I was afraid of," Agnes says quietly one night. "One thing goes wrong, and everything collapses." The baby comes in late summer, a boy, healthy, crying loudly. The midwife handles it efficiently, and within a week, the child is placed with a family in the countryside. Jean pays them 12 sous up front, promises more quarterly. It's the best arrangement available, but it means she's now working not just for herself, but to support a child she'll probably never see again. "I'm 28, she tells you one night, still recovering, still weeks away from being able to work again. "I've been here 4 years. I have nothing saved anymore. Nothing. I'll be here until I'm too old to work, and then I don't know what happens." You don't know either. None of you do. The other cost you're learning about is disease. Not the plague, not yet, but the smaller illnesses that circulate through the crowded quarters of medieval Paris. Fever, flux, the sweating sickness that comes in waves. Heloise gets sick in autumn. It starts as a cough, becomes something worse. She's fevered for days, can't work, can't even stand. Master Raymond the physician comes, prescribes rest and specific herbs. The herbs cost money, the rest cost money and lost earnings. She recovers eventually, but it takes 3 weeks. 3 weeks without income. Her parents' support stops during that time. She doesn't talk about what happened to them while the money wasn't coming. "It's always something," Margot says, and she sounds tired. "You plan perfectly, budget carefully, and then you get sick or pregnant, or a client gets rough and injures you, and suddenly your timeline is destroyed. The violence when it comes to you is almost mundane in its suddenness. A merchant, drunk beyond reason despite Madame Laurence's rules about refusing overly intoxicated clients. He seemed fine at first, paid properly, went upstairs, then he got rough. Too rough. You scream. Margot and Agnes come running. They pull him off you, and Madame Laurence has him thrown into the street. She sends for the watch, files a formal complaint. He's fined 8 sous and banned from all licensed establishments in Paris. 8 sous. Your bruises will last longer than it takes him to earn that back. The law worked, Madame Laurent says, trying to sound reassuring. He was punished. 8 sous, you repeat. I could have been seriously hurt and he pays 8 sous. It's more than nothing. But she doesn't sound convinced either. You take 3 days to recover. 3 days without income. The bruises fade, but the calculation remains. Your body is your livelihood, and it's vulnerable in ways you didn't fully understand before. The psychological cost is harder to quantify. You're good at not being present during the work, at thinking about other things, calculating numbers, imagining your future. But sometimes, lying awake in the narrow bed, you feel the weight of it. The repetition, the reduction of yourself to a service, the knowledge that hundreds of men will know your body while none of them will know you. Do you ever feel like you're disappearing? You ask Margot one night. She's quiet for a long time. Every day, she finally says, but the alternative was disappearing faster. At least this way, I have a chance. The isolation is real too. You can't tell anyone outside this house what you do. You avoid the markets during the day because running into clients in normal life is awkward for everyone. You can't go to festivals without being recognised and judged. The other women here become your entire social world, not by choice, but by necessity. Heloise's parents die within a month of each other during winter. She learns about it weeks after the fact, through her cousin. She wasn't invited to the funeral. Her siblings, who know the truth about her work, wanted nothing to do with her. She mourns alone in your shared room, crying quietly so as not to disturb anyone. I kept them alive for 3 extra years, she says through tears. I sent money every week, but they died ashamed of me anyway. There's nothing to say to that. Nothing that helps. Agnes's baker, the one she's saving her dowry for, gets married. Not to her, to someone else. A girl with a respectable family and a father who runs a successful business. Agnes learns about it in the market, sees the wedding party, sees him smiling at his new wife. She comes back to the house and smashes her money box against the wall. 11 months of saving, 712 sous scattered across the floor. She leaves it there for an hour before finally, methodically picking up every coin and starting over. New plan, she says, voice hollow. I don't know what yet, but new plan. The dream of escape, you're learning, is fragile. It depends on your health, on your luck, on circumstances completely outside your control. You can do everything right and still lose. Winter comes again, your second winter here. You've been at Madame Laurent's establishment for almost 18 months. You've saved 450 sous. By your calculations, you need at least 800 for a realistic chance at a different life. That's another year, maybe 18 months. 3 years total, you tell Margot. I can do 3 years. That's what I said, she reminds you. I'm in my 3rd year now, still here. Jean works despite her body not fully recovering from childbirth. She needs the money. She's supporting herself and paying for the child's care and trying desperately to rebuild some savings. She looks older every week. The hierarchy of escape becomes clear. Agnes has the best chance, young and with a specific plan. Margot has a realistic timeline if nothing goes wrong. You're somewhere in between. Eloise is stuck supporting dead parents' debts. Jean is probably never leaving. The system protects us, Margot says again, but it sounds different now. Less like hope and more like resignation. Better than nothing. Not the same as being safe. Not the same as being free. You understand now what she meant from the beginning. The laws, the contracts, the protections, they're all real. But they're also insufficient. They keep you from the worst exploitation while enabling a more subtle kind. You're not property, but you're not exactly free either. And time keeps passing, coins keep accumulating slowly, and the future keeps being somewhere just beyond reach. You smell it before you see it. Summer of 1348, and Paris smells like death. The plague arrived in spring, creeping up from the Mediterranean ports, moving through the countryside and finally reaching the city in June. At first, it's just rumours. People dying in Marseille, in Avignon. Then it's people dying in the suburbs. Then it's people dying on your street. The bathhouse, crowded and warm and full of bodies, becomes a death trap. The first to get sick is Agnes. She develops the fever overnight, and by morning she has the swellings in her neck and armpits. The buboes that give the plague its name. She's delirious by evening, dead by the next dawn. 23 years old, 712 sous saved, and it means nothing now. Master Raymond doesn't come for the monthly inspection. You hear later that he's dead too. Clients stop coming. The streets of the Latin Quarter, usually noisy with students and merchants, become eerily quiet. The university closes, shops close. People who can afford to flee the city do so. Everyone else locks their doors and prays. Madame Laurence makes a decision. We're closing. Everyone leaves. Take your money, go somewhere else. Don't stay in Paris. Where? Eloise asks. The plague is everywhere. Somewhere less crowded. A village, the countryside. Your chances are better outside the city. It's probably true. The plague loves cities, loves crowds, loves the tight-packed quarters where people share air and space and contamination. You pack your things, 450 sous in a leather pouch, 2 dresses, a cloak, and nothing else. 18 months of work reduced to what you can carry. Margot does the same. Come with me, she says. My sister lives near Chartres. Small village, far from the main roads. We can go there. You go. What else is there? The journey takes 5 days because you avoid the main roads where plague victims lie abandoned. You see things you'll never forget. Entire families dead in their homes, bodies piled outside churches, villages where no one comes to the door when you knock. Margot's sister's village has had the plague too, but it's passed, leaving behind survivors and ghosts. Her sister Marie is alive, but her husband and 1 child are dead. She's managing a bakery by herself now, barely holding on. You can stay, she tells Margot, looking at you with careful evaluation. If you work. Real work. What kind of work, you ask? Baking. The village needs bread. Half the workers are dead. I'll pay. She hesitates, doing calculations. 4 sous per week plus room and board. Both of you. 4 sous per week. 6 months ago you would have laughed at that offer. Now it sounds like salvation. You take it. So does Margot. The bakery work is hard. Harder than the bathhouse in many ways. You're up before dawn, kneading dough until your arms ache, standing in front of the oven's heat for hours. Your hands develop calluses. Your back hurts constantly. But it's honest work, respectable work. No one looks at you with disgust or pity or lust. You're just the baker's assistants. And in a world where half the population is dead, that's enough. The plague changes everything. Not just deaths, but the entire economy. With so many workers dead, labour becomes valuable. Suddenly, wages rise for everyone who survived. The rules that kept wages artificially low can't hold when there aren't enough workers to exploit. Marie raises your pay to 6 sous per week after 3 months. It's what I have to pay, she explains. Otherwise you'll find work elsewhere, and I can't run this place alone. 6 sous per week. It's not what you made at the bathhouse, but it's 3 times what laundresses made before the plague. And it's enough to live on without selling your body. Other women from the bathhouses, the ones who survived, find similar situations. The desperation that drove you into sex work has shifted. There are other options now. Not great options, but options. The mathematics of survival have changed. A year after the plague, you visit Paris briefly. The city is still recovering, still half empty. You go to see the bathhouse, curious about what happened to it. It's closed. The permit is gone from the wall. Madame Laurence is dead, you learn from a neighbour. Eloise too. Jean survived but left the city, no one knows where. The system that seemed so permanent, so entrenched, is collapsing. Not from moral reform or religious conviction, but from simple economics. When women have alternatives, fewer are willing to do this work. When fewer women do the work, the houses can't sustain themselves. You return to the village, to the bakery, to your life of early mornings and honest exhaustion. You have 600 sous saved now, still far from your original goal, but enough to feel secure, enough to imagine a future that doesn't involve selling yourself. Margot has similar savings. She's talking about buying the bakery from Marie eventually, making it a partnership. It's a real plan now, achievable within a few years instead of the distant fantasy it was before. "The plague killed me," she says one night, and you know she means her old self, the woman she was at the bathhouse. "But it also freed me." That's a strange thing to say about something that killed so many. You understand what she means. The plague destroyed the world that made your choices impossible. It killed the system that protected you inadequately while trapping you completely. You'll never stop feeling complicated about those 18 months. The shame of it, the practicality of it, the way it was both protection and exploitation, both survival and degradation. The laws were real. The protections were real. But so were the costs, and they were higher than any regulation acknowledged. You're back in your comfortable room now. The smell of medieval Paris is fading, replaced by the familiar scents of the 21st century. Your body doesn't ache from rough clients or exhausting labour. You're not calculating your survival in small silver coins. The story of medieval sex work is complicated in ways that don't fit neatly into modern debates. These weren't women exercising sexual freedom in some proto-feminist way. But they also weren't helpless victims with no agency. They were people navigating impossible economics with limited options, taking advantage of legal protections that were real but insufficient. The city of Paris regulated prostitution because regulation meant control and taxation. The permits, the contracts, the health inspections, these weren't kindness. They were the city government making money from women's limited choices while maintaining the fiction of moral order. The laws protected these women from some exploitation while enabling others. A woman could sue a client who refused to pay, but the fine for violence was 8 sous. She could refuse a client who violated her contract, but only if she could prove it and the magistrate cared. She had legal standing, which was more than most women had, but that didn't make her safe or free. The economic mathematics were brutal. Work this job for years, save carefully, hope nothing goes wrong, and maybe you could accumulate enough to escape into a different life. But illness destroyed the timeline. Pregnancy destroyed it. Aging destroyed it. Violence destroyed it. The system was designed to be survivable, but not escapable. And then the Black Death changed everything. Not through reform or enlightenment, but through the simple fact that when half the population dies, labour becomes valuable. When women had alternatives that paid living wages, they took them. The regulated brothels of medieval Paris couldn't sustain themselves when women weren't desperate enough to work there. The next time someone tells you sex work is the oldest profession, remember this. So is regulating it, taxing it, creating legal frameworks that pretend to protect while actually controlling. So is the economic desperation that drives women into it, and so is the pretense that any of this is about anything other than men wanting access to women's bodies while maintaining social order. Medieval Paris created a system that was more organised, more regulated and more legally acknowledged than most of history, and it was still exploitation, just exploitation, with permits and quarterly taxes. The women who worked in those bathhouses weren't empowered sex workers or degraded victims. They were just people trying to survive in a world that gave them few options and then judged them for the choices they made. Margot made it out. Agnes didn't. Jean got trapped. Heloise died alone. You, in this imagined journey, survived by luck and timing. That's the reality of it. Not good or bad, not empowering or victimizing, just complicated and human and real. Rest well. Let those images of medieval Paris fade, and maybe, before you sleep, think about how little the fundamental mathematics have changed. Different centuries, different regulations, same impossible choices. Thanks for travelling with me tonight. Leave a comment, tell me what surprised you most, and I'll see you in the next one.